Welcome back to the First and Goal podcast, everyone. We are here on a Tuesday night with Mitch Weinberg. How is it going?
It's good. First time in a while, we got a bit of NFL news. Last bit was Carson Wentz. This time, J.J. Watt.
Yes, sir. JJ Watt going to, I think it caught us both off guard. I was in gym class, 1 o'clock. And that just popped up on my phone. He went where? He went to the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, that for sure caught me off guard, and I'm sure it caught you off guard as well.
Yep, I remember I was skiing and then stopped at the chairlift, and my friend's like, J.J. Watt just went to the Cardinals, like super casual. I'm like, well, what did you just say? He's like, J.J. Watt went to the Cardinals. That is absolutely crazy. Apparently, when he ordered the shirts to do the reveal, he ordered like a bunch of shirts deciding. He asked his friend from high school to do it just so that if the mailman saw his credit card or his name, he'd get suspicious and he'd be the one leaking it. That's what I've been told by JJ Watt himself in his press conference, first one today with Arizona.
Yeah, JJ Watt did. I mean, I saw the press conference too. He went to extreme lengths to keep that Cardinals thing a secret, and just it was worth the secret keeping, because if that leaked, no one would have believed it, and two, everyone would have been going crazy because the Cardinals were nowhere near one of the bigger players. But when you think about it, it makes sense. DeAndre Hopkins is there, his former teammate, so obviously he has a relationship with him. You have a young, exciting quarterback, which was one of JJ Watt's big three things that he really needed to have when he was deciding his next team. Kyler Murray fits the bill perfectly. And then money. He got $15.5 million, which for him at this stage in his career, that's a lot of money.
JJ Watt's a guy that deserves all the money, deserves all the credit. Great player, great guy. But Arizona, that completely shocked me. He trolled everybody. I think he changed his Peloton bio to the three teams he was narrowing it down to. And if anybody's annoyed, I can imagine you are, because every year he's going to Packers, he's going to Buffalo, he's going to Cleveland. You hear that everywhere. And then Arizona, I didn't even know that was a possibility, in my opinion. Like, sure, DeAndre Hopkins posted, let's finish what we started. But like TJ Watt, come home family. Like, there's so many tipped off things, but like Arizona, he wanted to go to a team that can win. And I think Arizona can win, but that's not like a team that I know for the next 2 years will win the NFC West. I don't even know if they'll win the NFC West for the next 2 years duration of his contract, because the NFC West is a very competitive division. We have the Seahawks, who are competitors. You can never rule them out. You have the Rams, who have a very good offense and the best defense in the NFL, arguably. They have the Cardinals, again, who J.J. Watt signed to, a team that can easily compete. And now I feel terrible because I can't remember San Francisco, who is probably just about a quarterback away and no injuries from honestly one of the best teams. We can't forget that they were just in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. This is not a team that can be slept on. Half their players were hurt all year. It's not so great, but I think that they're just one quarterback, like one really good quarterback away from becoming NFC West title.
Yeah, the Cardinals, I mean, you talk about all the other teams in that division, they are all in Super Bowl mode. Like, these are not teams that the goal is to make the playoffs. No, the goal is to win the Super Bowl. We saw the Rams push all their cards or chips into the middle of the table with the Matthew Stafford trade. The Seahawks have been waiting ever since they got not upset, but they had that heartbreaking loss to the Patriots in the 2014 Super Bowl. They've been waiting to get back to the promised land ever since then. And then the 49ers, they were decimated by injuries. That's the only reason they didn't make the playoffs in 2020. So you talk about you look at base rosters, I'd say the Cardinals are probably have the worst roster out of any of those teams. And that is in no way, shape, or form a slight to the Cardinals. The Cardinals are an excellent team with a very good roster, but comparatively, it's probably the worst. So for JJ Watt looking to win a Super Bowl, the Cardinals aren't going to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. They might not even win their division. They may finish last in their division and still be a 10-win team, but they might finish last. That could guarantee them a wild card spot, but no home field advantage going up against the NFC, which is very strong right now. It's a little bit confusing to say the least. He chooses the best division in the league, and the worst team in that division, in my opinion. I just don't like it from a JJ Watt standpoint. Now, if you're the Cardinals, I think you really look out here. But from a JJ Watt standpoint, I don't think it really fit what he was looking for. I mean, the quarterback was there, the money was there, but it was rumored that winning a Super Bowl and winning overall was his biggest need that he needed. And Buffalo, Tennessee, Green Bay, who were rumored to be his top three choices, all fit the bill. The Cardinals, in my mind, they don't.
I don't think the Cardinals they're close, but they're not ready. They're one of the teams, I think you like said it well. I don't think that they're probably the worst team in the NFC West, but that's again, like comparing the other teams, it's saying very, very little. I think if he signed with Buffalo, that fits the bill. I don't know how much money he actually would have been making to Buffalo, but that's the only team that I can say is the only team that's guaranteed to win a division next year. The Miami right now is all sorts. I'm confused. I don't know what to think. Um, the Jets, again, a team that's not ready to contend yet, and the Patriots are just in the middle of a midlife crisis, it seems. So Buffalo seems ready to win a Super Bowl. We saw Stephon Diggs. He's ready to get annoyed because after he was the only Bills player stood out, watch the championship parade. Josh Allen, Cole Beasley, tons of really great guys. Tre'Davious White, a lot of good talent, a lot of good players. But Larry Fitzgerald's coming back to Arizona every year to win a Super Bowl. His career was ruined by Arizona, and I'm not saying Arizona is terrible, but like we know that as NFL fans, he's one of the many players whose teams who've had their careers ruined. JJ Watt being one of them, Megatron, Barry Sanders by the Lions. So many players have had their careers destroyed because of a bad team. And we're not coming out here saying that Arizona's a bad team, but if he wants to boost his legacy instead of bring it down, then unless he wins a defensive player of the year, which is realistically the only award I could see him coming away with this year, not a ring, but an award, then there's in no way, shape, or form like a chance they can win. I'm not saying there's no chance they can win the Super Bowl, but I favor a lot of other teams, not only in that division, but just looking at it overall.
Yeah, and you talk about how Larry Fitzgerald was there. Larry Fitzgerald is kind of like the same type of player like JJ Watt. Like clearly a Hall of Fame guy, hasn't had much team success over the course of his career. Of course, Larry Fitzgerald made a Super Bowl loss to the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger, but doesn't have a ring, just like JJ Watt. But of course, he's getting into the Hall of Fame, and he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer for sure. But I mean, going to a team that in the Cardinals has made the Super Bowl, but hasn't won throughout the entire tenure of Larry Fitzgerald. You also talk about a guy in Anquan Boldin, who a lot of people forget played the majority of his career with the Cardinals and was exceptional with them. He didn't win anything with them either. Of course, Fitzgerald and Boldin's time overlapped there. They had those two guys and could have won a Super Bowl. Also, Kurt Warner was on that team. Those were some very, very good teams, and they couldn't win a Super Bowl. That team was clearly better than the team that they have right now in a much easier division. So, JJ Watt, I mean, you aren't going to win a Super Bowl with this team. I just don't see it happening. I mean, I don't know how anyone else does. I don't know how JJ Watt could come in there and think, all right, we're going to win a Super Bowl. I just don't understand the mindset. I don't understand what he sees that we don't, because the Cardinals, also, remember, in 2015, they were a dangerous team. They beat up on Aaron Rodgers and the Packers twice throughout the course of that year, beat up on them. And they didn't even make the Super Bowl. They got blown out to the 2015 Carolina Panthers in the conference championship game, who was an excellent team, but the Cardinals couldn't combat it. So they've had a lot of opportunities, a lot of really good teams in this century, last 20 years, and they haven't been able to do anything with it. And I don't see how this is different with a worse coach than Bruce Arians. Cliff Kingsbury is not my favorite coach. When overall, worst team.
I think that's absolutely correct. And according to JJ Watt, one of the main reasons he went there was because he believed in Kyler Murray. I don't 100% buy into Kyler Murray. I don't love him. I think I've said this numerous times. I don't love scrambling quarterbacks similar to Lamar. And it's not to beat up on 5'9" quarterbacks, because you could be small and be a great quarterback. Tons of quarterbacks have proven that throughout the test of time. But that team, just looking at it, seems like a really good team. I think that Arizona is a good roster, but it's, can that roster play? Can it contend? It could play at a very high level, but it's really tough in Arizona. And as you mentioned, Cliff Kingsbury, again, not one of my favorite coaches. Bruce Arians, one of the better coaches in the history of the National Football League, a guy that doesn't get enough credit, and that ring to his name. Like, he was one of the legendary Arizona Cardinals coaches. Legendary. I don't know if they have like a ring of honor, but he definitely, in my opinion, I think he deserves to be in there. And Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden, two guys ruined by Arizona. They were so close, but beyond that 1 year, they were never really close again. But we can't forget that legendary Santonio Holmes catch Super Bowl. They were basically almost, I don't even know that measurement, but if they just pushed Santonio Holmes out of bounds, think about that for a second. That could have been Larry Fitzgerald's Super Bowl, and we would be having this conversation. But when you think of winning franchises, Arizona is one of the last team that comes to mind. They're 100 years old and have won no Super Bowls.
Yeah, not impressive. And I mean, I feel like we're backing the Cardinals a little too much, even though, I mean, the track record isn't in their favor. We have to admit, they aren't as poorly run as a team like the Jets or the Jaguars. They aren't that kind of franchise. There's definitely that potential for them to be a great team. It's just in the past, they've had great rosters, they've had great records, but when it matters most, they haven't really showed up and really proven that they can show up. So it's a little puzzling that JJ Watt decides to go to the Arizona Cardinals, given the current state of things, especially in the NFC West. So moving on, let's talk about some more free agency, foreshadowing the top 5 biggest deals coming up this free agency period that begins in about 15 days. Mitch, both of our number one guy, the biggest contracts that we think will be dished out this season is to Dak Prescott. And we have both figures, going to spoil it a little bit, in the 40s. You have $3 million more than me, 45. I have 42, just a little bit under Patrick Mahomes. Talk about why you gave him that $45 million contract, the same as Patrick Mahomes' annual average per year.
Okay, before I get into this, I do not think that Dak Prescott is at anywhere on the same level as Patrick Mahomes, but I'm not saying Dak Prescott is bad, because we know I'm a big fan and big believer of Dak Prescott, as is a lot of people. When you look at the quarterback market this year, it's no secret. Sam and I talk about it all the time that it is really important, the quarterback market this year, because next year it's not as good. And Dak Prescott is the big catch. If Deshaun Watson, tons of quarterbacks that are really good are not really inclined to be traded. So Dak Prescott hitting the free agent market is huge. He's going to get paid a ton of money because he's a top 7 quarterback in the NFL. Well, for the sake of this, we'll say top 7. I'm not going to be grasping at straws saying like top 5. It's obvious he's top 10. So top 7, probably 6, 7. And when you're playing on a level of Dak Prescott, who's on pace to be the passing leader this year, I think that it's quite fair for if he was about to throw for 62. He was on pace for 6,200 yards, which would have shattered the record. I think you deserve to be paid a ton of money. And I'm just curious to see where he lands, because in our next segment, we're going to be talking about bold predictions. I am curious to see how Dallas is going to come up with this money, because right now, all the sources I've heard, talks are good. They're going to get a deal done, blah, blah, blah. This is what I heard last year. And this is what everyone heard last year. So if he's not going to get paid in Dallas, he is going to get paid somewhere else, because some team will put in this amount of money for him and will get exceptional results.
I actually think it is pretty likely and relatively likely that, he does get paid maybe that $45 million that Patrick Mahomes got paid, or maybe just a little bit less, or just, again, at that $45 million, because time and time again, we see the next big name quarterback up for free agency get paid the same as the highest paid, or maybe even a little bit more, even if they aren't necessarily better than that player. It's just the necessity is there, so you pay him whatever it takes. And Dak Prescott is that guy this season. So I actually wouldn't be surprised if Dak Prescott is not signed when other teams are allowed to start talking to players. I wouldn't be surprised if he is not signed before then, that he would actually be paid that $45 million because when other teams get involved, the price is automatically going to go up because there are going to be teams bidding against each other. So Dak Prescott is going to be a hot commodity. So there are going to be a lot of teams that are trying to one up the next guy. And you would have to assume that that bidding would go above $45 million because I would assume the starting price would be somewhere around 40. So of course you're going to get above that $45 million. If he signed before, I think it might be just a little bit less because the Cowboys are going to want to save as much money as they possibly can. And if it happens before, you're not going to have that bidding aspect. So it's going to be just a negotiation. It's not going to be a bidding back and forth between teams. So I would expect that number to be a little bit lower. That's why I give it 42, because I think the Cowboys are going to do all that they can do to get him signed before that March 17th date.
I think that's absolutely correct. I apologize. My Wi-Fi is not the greatest. I'm not in the usual setup. If you're watching on YouTube, you could see. If you've been watching on YouTube, you know this is not exactly where I do most of my setup. But absolutely, Dak Prescott is without a doubt the best player in this free agent class, and Jerry Jones is basically just a wild card. If we're just gonna put it plain and simple, we don't know what's gonna happen because if Dak Prescott walks, the Cowboys' whole offseason train, or at least in my mind, falls off the tracks into a hole and sets them back 5 years. And they're already in a case where they're in like semi win now mode, whatever that means for Dallas, because we've been in win now mode. It seems they've been in win now mode for what it seems to be since 2015, 2016, 2014 even. They seem to be in win now mode, but they're underperforming. And I think it doesn't have to do with Dak Prescott, but without Dak Prescott, we saw what the Cowboys looked like. They looked like the team that played in 2015. It was a pain to watch, but I watched all of it, and we saw quarterbacks trying to step in there. Matt Castle, Mark Sanchez, just to name a few, tried to step in there, couldn't get the job done. This is a team that is built around Dak Prescott, and Dak Prescott has to win with them because no one else seems to be able to.
Yeah, Dak Prescott is the name of the game for the Dallas Cowboys. He is pretty much, I mean, I don't want to say he's their entire team, but he's a large percentage. He's
the whole he's the whole team. Like the receivers are excellent. CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, excellent. Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard, two really good running backs. Zeke had an off year. What are you going to do about it? Not every running back is 1,000,000% consistent. Not everyone can be Barry Sanders. And the offensive line was banged up all year. So turning injuries off, Cowboys can easily do well. But turning injuries on, well, we saw what happened. It was a blunder.
Yeah, not great. Dak Prescott definitely. I mean, he's their whole team. Let's be honest. He's their whole team.
Majority.
Let's say 95%.
I think that's generous. I think he gave him 99% because the defense you're going to count for zero. Yeah, like DeMarcus Lawrence, and Donovan Wilson. But we'll try to get into the Cowboys another episode. Now on to the second guy. Again, oddly enough, Sam and I are agreeing, and I don't like it. So Allen Robinson, Allen Robinson, you have him at number 2. I also have him tied at number 2. But let's start with the guy that is more likely to get paid higher than the other, Allen Robinson.
Yeah, Allen Robinson. I love him because he's not a guy that gets so much love and gets overhyped in the media, but he's an A-list wide receiver. He is a tier 1 type of guy. Bubble top 5 wide receiver. If we're talking about top 5, then he's 5. He's not going to be any higher than that, but that's still very impressive. He is a well-rounded wide receiver that is instantly a wide receiver 1 and a quality, high quality wide receiver 1 for your team, and he's going to be paid like it. This is a doozy. I'm giving him $25 million per year. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. That would make him the second highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. That would give him 27. Sorry. The highest paid is $27 million per year. That's DeAndre Hopkins. Allen Robinson. There are going to be a lot of teams after Allen Robinson. There's going to be the Giants, probably the Jets, Ravens, Colts. I think that, or Ravens, actually, they said they probably won't be going after one of
Why?
those guys.
Why? That is so like that is.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I'm just like, oh, Lamar, I'm so sorry. You have to
Yeah.
deal with Marquise Brown, Willie Snead,
Yeah.
great wide receivers. They have the cap space to go after a guy. Not even Allen Robinson, but like, oh God, I can't believe they said no, we're not going to go after a wide receiver. We'll just stick to the ground game, which is smart. But this isn't college. You can't just run the ball a million times and win the game.
I mean, we literally saw it didn't work. But anyway, regardless, Ravens out. There's still going to be a lot of teams going after him. Colts, Giants, Jets, just to name three. I mean, there will be a lot more teams going after him, believe me, especially since the Ravens dropped out, one less team to compete with. So when you talk about Robinson's contract, I think being the second highest paid wide receiver is not a stretch whatsoever. And I think $25 million is a nice sweet spot in between the current second highest paid and then, of course, the current first paid. Right in between the current second paid is, I think, 22 and a half. So it's kind of right in the middle. Robinson, like we said with Prescott, I think his stock and his price is going to go up a bit because of that bidding war. I think there are going to be a lot of teams, especially the Giants, the Colts, that are going to go all in for Allen Robinson, really go all in for this guy because they need wide receiver ones. They need guys, tier one wide receivers, to help their quarterbacks develop, help their quarterbacks reach their full potential. And they'd be smart to do so because Allen Robinson makes every quarterback that he plays with look better. He played with Blake Bortles. He made Blake Bortles look better. He played with Mitch Trubisky. Again, he made Mitch Trubisky look better than he actually is. Robinson is a fantastic wide receiver, and I really think we're going to see him become the second highest paid wide receiver this offseason.
Absolutely. I think he could be. I don't have him as a second highest paid wide receiver, but I think he easily could be. You said it. He makes everybody, the quarterback better around him better. I think Mitch Trubisky is not a really good quarterback. I wouldn't say that. And I wouldn't say Blake Bortles is a really good quarterback. But we saw what Blake Bortles did. He had like a okay year. Mitch Trubisky, MVP, untouchable. What do you want me to do? But I think that he'd rather go to a team paying him $5 million less with a better quarterback, because one of the teams you mentioned in there right now, Giants, they would offer him a lot of money. But if I'm a wide receiver, I don't want to head to New York. Daniel Jones is one of the definitions of a mid-tier quarterback.
Bad.
Bad. Okay.
Bad.
Bad. Well, I think we'll get into later on. Sam and I hopefully will be posting some scouting sessions, crapping on Daniel Jones. I like that idea. I was just trying to be nice. Okay, no, he's bad. Okay, but I want to tell you, New York fans, he can run and he can't even complete the play. He's not a finisher.
He can run and fall.
He can throw the ball 10 yards inside the numbers. Okay, yeah, woohoo. That's no. If I'm Allen Robinson, I'm prioritizing a good quarterback versus money. And throughout his career, he's never had a Pro Bowl quarterback.
A good quarterback.
Unless Blake Bortles was a Pro Bowler that year. Was he? No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I will search that up and I will get back to you on this.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But now if Blake Bortles was a Pro Bowler that year, I wouldn't blame him. Like, sure, you could say the defense carried, but okay, he wasn't a Pro Bowler.
All right,
but who knows? Blake Bortles, another free agent quarterback. Is he going to crack the list? No. Don't get your hopes up, Blake Bortles fans. I'm sorry. If there are any of you out there.
Yeah. Yeah, Blake Bortles not going to be on the list, but another guy that will be on the list and is going to get paid this offseason, we both have him as our final $20 million man this offseason. That's going to be Shaq Barrett. You have him tied for second, getting $20 million. I have him getting $20 million as well. even though his sack numbers decreased, he was still a monster. He was an animal off the edge this year. And that showed in the playoffs as well. I mean, he looked like his 2019 self in the 2020 playoffs. And it's not like he played worse in the 2020 regular season. His stats just got a little decreased, which is no biggie because we over here at the First and Goal podcast know that stats aren't everything. And Shaq Barrett is still due for a massive contract. We think $20 million because he is a force off the edge, just a force to be reckoned with. That shows in his Pro Football Focus grades. Hasn't gotten below a 75 or a 74, something like that, 74, 75 in his entire career, his 6-season career. So he is a phenomenal player, an incredible player that is absolutely due for a big payday, and we both think he's going to crack that 20 million club.
I mean, why wouldn't you want a guy off the edge like Shaq Barrett? This is a guy that should be paid top money because he's a top player. As I mentioned, stats are not everything. I hate stat people unless it's actually relevant to the argument. But you can't say that one player had more sacks, therefore he's better. Sure, he has more sacks 1 year, but what do we see? A stat that's not talked about: pressures. Who's actually able to win off the line of scrimmage? Shaq Barrett is able to do that. And as Sam and I always talk about, how do we measure someone that's over or underrated? It's based on their contract. And $20 million does it justice. Okay. Because we see JJ Watt isn't putting up a ton of sacks. But is he worth the contract? Slightly less than the contract, sure. But I wouldn't say it's obscene that he gets paid $20 million. And a lot of edge rushers this year will probably get paid a lot of money, and Shaq Barrett should be one of those top dogs, 100%.
Yeah, you talk about guys like Bud Dupree being free agents this offseason, Hassan Reddick, all excellent players. It's very, very good talents and younger edge rushers that should all be paid north of $10 million on an annual average base. I think that's just something that will happen, something that should happen. You talk about all those guys. Shaq Barrett is far and away the best player in terms of edge rushers this season. Just almost knocked my mic over. In terms of edge rushers this season, maybe, just maybe, in terms of defensive ends and outside linebackers this offseason. If you really want to say Leonard Williams is better than Shaq Barrett, maybe, but Shaq Barrett is top 2 for sure. That's not debatable. Shaq Barrett adds so much to your team. You talk about why the Bucs won the Super Bowl. Devin White. 2 is Shaq Barrett. Devin White and Shaq Barrett are electric. They are athletic. They are hungry. They have great instincts, great awareness skills. They win games for you in the front 7. Shaq Barrett, of course, free agent. White not. Barrett is going to get paid, especially coming off of the Super Bowl win. He was on a huge stage, and he showed up. He was one of the biggest reasons why his team got a ring. And that's going to be valued.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't – who's going to win you games? Who's going to win off the edge? And who ultimately is going to get sacks? Because let's be real, he is definitely a potential person that I think can lead the league in sacks. Again, I believe he did it in Denver in 2019. If not, if he didn't lead the league in sacks,
Bucs
he
in
was
2019.
Bucs in 2019. Sorry, he played in Denver. But regardless, this is a guy that easily can lead the league in sacks with 15 plus sacks easily, no doubt. This is a guy that is a can't miss player. Can't miss him.
Can't miss him. Deserves. We both agree, deserves north of $20 million, just at that $20 million mark. But this is where our paths split.
Which you're used to.
Of course. Neither of our 4 and 5 guys are the same. So, Mitch, you started off. Who is your number 4 player?
My number 4 player was Justin Simmons. And I'm going to tell you why. He is probably the player that I think is most likely to get franchise tagged 100%. But if I'm Justin Simmons, I'm not happy about it. Denver, this is the second year in a row they're going to be using the franchise tag. This is, again, ranking safeties pretty loose in the NFL. Like, the list can be pretty loose, honestly. couldn't name you who the like top dog safety in the league is, like 100%. This is absolutely the best guy. There isn't really. There's a bunch of really good safeties, but there's no guy that I'm saying I'm putting above all the rest. If you put Justin Simmons above all the rest, I'm not throwing any qualms. I'm not annoyed. I think, sure, this is a guy that deserves to be paid and extended like a real player, not just a team that is holding off on extending him. No, this is a guy that is entered free agency for the second year in a row. And if I'm with Denver, again, he should be on a team that wants to win. I don't know what Denver is thinking. I don't know if they're ready to win. I don't know if they're rebuilding. I don't know if they're just in a state of mediocrity for the next 3 years. But Justin Simmons could contend on an elite secondary, and he can bring up any secondary from mediocre to amazing and the best. He's a game changer, absolutely a game changer. And this is a guy that can cover well. He knows his stuff, and I think that this is a guy that you cannot miss and deserves to be extended like a real player.
I agree with that. I think he definitely deserves to be extended like a real player. He is a top 3 safety in the league at this point in his career. However, I think he's going to get tagged again. I don't think he's going to get extended again. I just don't. I think the new general manager is going to franchise tag Justin Simmons, and that's why he's not on my list. But otherwise, if he wasn't, he might be number 5. I wouldn't say number 4. I think that's a little bit steep price just for a safety. I mean, $18 million. I think you have 17. Yeah, $17 million. I'm not the biggest fan of that for a safety, but listen, he's an incredible player. I just think he's going to get franchise tagged. Now, my number 4, though, is going to be Trent Williams. Number 2, I think he's the number 2 free agent overall in this entire class. I really do. At age 33, he is still one of the better tackles in the NFL, one of the best tackles in the NFL, and he still deserves to be paid like it because he does not show signs of slowing down. I mean, this guy is a phenomenal player that I think deserves to be paid $18 million because that's how good he is, and that's how valued I think tackles should be.
I think that's really fair. I mean, offensive linemen, we saw after the Super Bowl how highly they have to be valued. A lot of positions values are going to be extremely changed after this offseason. We're not saying every position is not valuable, but we see that some positions are more valuable than others looking back on this year and looking just overall at the NFL and the way it's moving forward. With that being said, I think Trent Williams is a guy that, as you said it, he's not slowing down. He may seem old, maybe getting a 1-2 year deal, but if he gets paid $18 million north of that, south of that, like he's a great tackle and he's a guy that's competitive and he's very good at engaging blocks, run protection, pass protection. He's one of the best offensive linemen in the National Football League, and he deserves to be paid like it. And with that being said, going into my number 5 guy is Brandon Sheriff, I believe, from the Washington football team. One of the better guards that that the league has to offer, in my opinion. I think he's somewhat underrated, turning 30 this coming year. And guards is a position, in my opinion, that's very undervalued. Tackles are valued over them, centers too. Guards are really, really important. And Brandon Sheriff brings a lot to the table. I mean, as you can see, Cowboys fan. I watch the Cowboys play him twice a year, and he's not letting up the Cowboys or any team really sack him. And I get it, the Cowboys front four may not be great, but even still, watching just film overall, this is a guy that deserves to be paid high on the guard hierarchy. He's easily a top 5 guard in the NFL. So he should be paid and given a decent extension. I have him marked down for $15 million.
I think Sheriff is a excellent player, definitely one of the better guards in the league. Should be paid like it. I kind of agree with that $15 million mark. However, I have someone who I think will be paid more than that. That's going to be Chris Godwin. And I think Godwin will be paid around $16 to $17 million. You look at what Godwin did, had 840 receiving yards on that stacked Tampa Bay Bucs roster, that's a roster filled with guys like Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, just superstars overall, Antonio Brown, that got theirs in 2020 and were still very good. So when you're talking about 840 yards on a team with stacked players, Hall of Fame players, and he was the second best receiver on that squad, that's impressive. And he still got his. He also showed up in the playoffs and made a heartbreaking catch versus the Packers for me. Ridiculous catch. It was batted up in the air by Darnell Savage, and somehow he was midair, somehow brought it down and caught it. I'm going to remember that for a long time. That was a gut punch. It was in the first half, but still a gut punch. And Godwin, I mean, that play is going to be engraved in my mind forever. Godwin is a special player. He made catches like that, crazy contested catches, can work out in and out of the slot, projects more as a slot receiver, but still, his value is incredible to teams like Indianapolis, who Godwin could work inside the slot, have Pittman become your number one wide receiver outside of the slot. You have a great 1-2 punch there. Godwin will be getting most of the targets in that offense, though, as the number one guy from the jump. So Godwin, I think, will be paid around $16 to $17 million because he's a special player. He's a very, very special player and can annually get 1,000 receiving yards on the right offense. Because, I mean, Tampa was just so stacked that the opportunities weren't necessarily there, but he's that kind of player. So those are our lists for what we think the most expensive contracts will be in this offseason period. Now let's get on to some fun stuff. Let's talk about bold predictions. Now, whenever we do bold predictions on this show, you know it's going to get fun. You know it's going to get a little bit out there. So I'm very excited for this. Mitch, give us your first bold prediction. Mitch, you there? Well, Wi-Fi issues, of course, we get used to this in COVID and the pandemic. So I'll just go ahead and give my first one to begin. That is
My first bold prediction, honestly, a shocker to many people. Wi-Fi is terrible.
yeah, we're having some Wi-Fi issues. Why don't you leave and come back, and then we'll see how that works. But first off, my first bold prediction is gonna be Will Fuller, Allen Robinson, Kenny Galladay, Chris Godwin, Juju
Again, I
Smith-Schuster.
apologize. You're just starting as I interrupted you.
Let's just continue. Juju Smith-Schuster, Curtis Samuel, all of those guys will all be paid over $15 million in this free agency period. Now, it's not a bold prediction that Robinson, Galladay, or Godwin will be paid over $15 million whatsoever. I mean, that's a given. This is going to happen. Those guys are exceptional players. Just had to include them because, of course, it will be over $15 million. However, I think Juju, Fuller, Samuel will all be paid over that $15 million mark as well. And that's a bold prediction of mine because I'm not sure Samuel or Smith-Schuster or really Fuller really deserves that given Fuller's spotty history. Smith-Schuster, I mean, he's a very good player. I'm just not sure he's worth it. And then Samuel, the consistency hasn't really been there, but all of these guys has shown $15 million potential. All of these guys have shown that they can be $15 million caliber players. So whether they will be paid that or will not be paid that, I don't think is a tell of how good that they can be and how good that they have shown they can be and how good they shown they are. Because I think all of these guys have shown that they are worth that $15 million contract at times in their careers. However, they each have their own issues. They all have their own issues. And I think that might hold them back a little bit. But there's no doubt in my mind that in a normal circumstance, if they were all consistent enough, if they could all stay on the field at times, then they would all be paid over $15 million contracts. So I think it's a bold prediction in the sense that I don't think it'll necessarily happen, but I definitely think in a normal circumstance, it would happen.
I think that's pretty fair. A lot of those guys you named absolutely deserve those contracts. You seem to think Will Fuller doesn't. I can absolutely see him getting paid $15 million a year. Looking just based on talent alone, he absolutely deserves to be there. Juju, he has problems, and I don't like him particularly. And Curtis Samuel, I just don't know what the market will end up looking like for a wide receiver slash running back type of deal like that. So my first bold prediction, for the first time in a while, I actually went kind of conservative with all three, which unheard of. But the first bold prediction that I have is that the Patriots will go after a quarterback in free agency versus the draft. Look, the free agent class this year of quarterbacks is not so great, if we're just going to be honest here. Beyond Dak Prescott, we're looking at guys like Mitch Trubisky and Colt McCoy, Andy Dalton, Ryan Fitzpatrick even. I mean, those are veteran guys that if signed to like a 1-year deal could benefit the Patriots a long, long way. Look, it is going to be a lot easier to sign a vet quarterback or Mitch Trubisky to a few years than to risk a lot and go after a rookie quarterback, which the Patriots could easily do within the next 2 years. I just think it would benefit them in the long run if they signed a Ryan Fitzpatrick guy for like a year, because we see he can go in almost anywhere and just not, I wouldn't say tear it up, but not get torn up. And I think that signing to the Patriots, putting Ryan Fitzpatrick and Bill Belichick, that just seems like a lot of fun and something I would love to see.
So you think they play the long game a little bit, don't jump on the, all right, let's win now and develop a quarterback.
They
type
can't
of
win now.
bandwagon?
How in the world are they going to win now?
That's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. Hold on, I take that back.
I'm just, whoa, explosion.
Not win now, but like turn into a new era and get their next franchise quarterback. You don't think they do that this year?
I don't think they can, especially looking at their pieces. There's a lot that has to happen. The Patriots organization, in my opinion, is starting to slowly go downhill and decline and not be what it was once with Tom Brady, who is the certified GOAT. And I just think that the Patriots are a long, long while away. And I think that look at the Patriots, and as much as this hurts to say, because I never thought I'd ever say this, looking into next year, this will probably be one of the worst teams in the National Football League. It hurts me to say, and I feel like that's a bold prediction within itself. But unless they have an incredible draft, which I wouldn't rule out, there's just not enough for me to say that the Patriots are ready to start developing a new quarterback. And I'm not saying the Patriots should get rid of Bill Belichick, but if I'm the Kraft family, I'm taking Belichick on thin ice next year. And that seems crazy, but the last 2 years, he's just been going downhill. And I'm not saying, and Cam Newton's a huge downgrade from Tom Brady, obviously, but like, just saying, it's not a good look.
Bill Belichick on thin ice.
As crazy as it is to say, and as much as I don't like saying it, like, what? They lost to the Chiefs. Okay. This season, from a Patriots standpoint, the Patriot way is unacceptable. And I think if he has like 2-3 more years, like, something's got to change, because the Patriots, Boston's a huge sport market and they want to see wins. Next year, I don't think they're going to see a lot of wins. So I'm not saying they're going to fire him right away after starting off with having a losing record, but that's just something I'd keep an eye on, saying, okay, maybe the Patriots aren't contenders right now. They will be obviously in the future, but right now, just with an outlook of what is going to look like, the offense is shaky and the defense is top 10. Could be a top 10 defense with all their players coming back. We can't forget a lot of them opted out.
I think it'd be very interesting to see and very kind of funny if, like, let's say 2, 3, 4 years down the road, the Patriots still suck and they're still a very bad team.
That's what you get after 20 years. Yeah, that is what you get.
It'd be very funny to see Boston sports fans chanting for Bill Belichick's firing. If they would even do that, I don't know.
I wouldn't do it.
It'd be very funny. It would be pretty funny.
How the turntables
have turned.
Finish my sandwich.
My number 2 guy or prediction is going to be that this is, I really think is a hot take, is that Leonard Williams will get over $18.5 million. Now, I'm not necessarily the biggest believer in this, but
or believer in bold predictions.
I
Like when
wouldn't.
you go bold, this is like a Mitchell Weinberg bold
Yeah,
prediction.
yeah.
Wow.
I wouldn't be so shocked if it happened, because I'm not sure he's worth $20 million to the Giants. But when you talk about, okay, level of importance of players on the New York Football Giants, 1, Leonard Williams, 2, big gap, big gap, big gap. I couldn't say who 2 is because I'm not the biggest Giants fan, but you clearly know that Leonard Williams is 1. That it's not a debate.
Are we talking free agents or are we talking overall
No,
on the roster?
overall on the roster.
What are I'm gonna pretend that
When Barkley is on the field, which he hasn't really been.
Yes, okay, but beyond Barkley, then it's basically actually big gap Blake Martinez.
Blake Martinez. Are you kidding me?
Tackles
you
leader.
Want to talk about
Tackles leader.
You want to talk about Blake Martinez to a Packers fan?
Oh no, I forgot. This is a bad idea. Oh no.
Let's not do that. Let's not go there.
Tackles leader.
Yeah.
Tackles leader.
Yeah, that's the one thing that good that
did.
can be said about him, which is not much. Not much. Tackles leader does not mean
Jalen Smith was Smith was top 3 in tackles leader. He's pretty terrible, but that's another conversation for another
time. But okay, definitely last season. Let's just say last season, because Saquon Barkley, phenomenal player, but when you look at what he's done over the career, great player, but he hasn't been able to stay on the field too much, which is obviously a massive downgrade. But just talking about last year, Leonard Williams was clearly the most vital player to the New York Giants. How much will they be willing to pay Leonard Williams? That's interesting. Will they be willing to only pay him market value? Because he took that team to the next level. He took that defense, again, to the next level. He was the reason why they were so good. So will the Giants be willing to overpay for a player of his stature to keep the defense where they were and keep them from regressing? Because I think a real argument could be made that it's worth overpaying a little bit for him so that you can keep the defense where it was and help them build off of that 2020 campaign and get better instead of taking a big step back and losing Leonard Williams just because you weren't willing to pay a few extra $1 million that you probably will have after you make cuts and stuff, etc., and maneuver the cap to retain your best player from 2020.
I think that's right. And a guy that kind of came to my mind, you could probably argue, and I'd say that there's a bigger gap, is James Bradbury. Had a phenomenal 2020 campaign.
Yeah, James Bradbury, number 2.
Like, you could probably, honestly, you could switch him up. I think that James Bradbury was a top 15 cornerback this year. Like, played phenomenal, lights out, and he did not get talked about enough. Just because you don't get interceptions does not mean you're a bad corner. See, this is why we hate stats.
I actually think he did get a solid amount of picks. Hold on, let's see.
Yeah, but am I going to rank him over a ton of corners that had more interceptions than him? Sure. I think he had I want to say
he had 3. Solid.
3. Good. That's a good corner number. You want 3 interceptions. Like what? He's not a quarterback. He's not going to get an interception every week. That is crazy just to think about it. Xavier Howard led the league with 9. Just take that into account. But no, Leonard Williams is a guy that could get paid top dog money, but you're talking north of around, not saying I'm paying him this much, but around $20 million, which in my mind is crazy. I'm not saying it's because of a D lineman, but $18.5 million for a guy that's a very good player, but is he a Pro Bowler? Because that's Pro Bowl money. You're telling me that next year he's going to be a Pro Bowler if the Giants sign him to that deal. That's what he's worth. He's worth a Pro Bowl amount of money.
You could argue that I mean, I think he's worth that too. I think he is worth that. Listen, here, just to sum up this point, and then we'll go on to your second. It's about how much the Giants think Williams is worth to their team and what he brings, how they value what he brings to their team. It's not about how good of a player is, in my mind, because Williams brings more than his stats or his productivity to the Giants. He took their team to the next level. I mean, let's just be honest.
Defense. Keyword defense.
Defense, offense, still not great. He took their defense to the next level, and he was the reason he made everyone else around him better. So as the Giants, how good or how much do you think he improves your team? Because if you think without him, you go back to a 2-14 team or a 3-13 team, then yeah, I think you probably pay him that $17 million, maybe $18 million. But I wouldn't be so shocked if he gets paid a considerable amount more, $4 to $5 million more from the Giants than people are really expecting. So now let's get to your second before I ramble too much on about Leonard Williams.
Yep. I think that Leonard Williams hopefully does not become a familiar face on this podcast like so many other NFL characters. Now, my second bold predictions. Honestly, I'm kind of disappointed in myself that I didn't go so wild, but there wasn't so many wild things to talk about. But I think that Davion Clowney, the disappointment of last year's free agent class, if we're being honest, the market value for him is about $7-ish million. I think he can get a $10 million contract. I think a team would be stupid to not give him a lot of money, okay? Because he's not a Pro Bowl level talent. Oh, he's not a Pro Bowl level player, okay? But I tell you what, I've seen what Clowney can do at his best, and you've seen it. Everyone's seen it. He was the first overall pick, but we're not measuring off of picks here because in that case, Jamarcus Russell was supposed to be the next great one, and you know what? Didn't even play in the CFL. You're that bad. Or in the Fan Controlled Football League. Shout out to them. Anyways, Davion Clowney is a very good edge rusher. Went on the field. He was injured. He's expected to make a full recovery, and he's a guy that when on the field and when playing good football could be one of the best edge rushers in the league. We've seen when he's able to do. We see that he can win blocks, play good in the run game, and just get off the edge overall. And that's all you really want in an edge rusher. It's in the name. So is he a good player? Yes. Does he deserve to be paid $10 million? Maybe. Like that is probably the most I'd pay for him. If I'd pay a dime more for him, I'd say you're overrating him. And again, I think Clowney's a phenomenal player. I'm sure you can agree, but $10 million is a lot of money.
Yeah. I would not pay $10 million. I probably wouldn't pay $7 million for Jadeveon Clowney.
So you're telling me that you think Jadeveon Clowney should just sit there? Do you think that he's done?
He sat there until like August 30th last year.
Well, you know what? You want to
Did he do anything? He was
hurt. He was hurt. What do you want from me?
He started 8 games.
Oh, 8 games? That's how you could judge.
Will Fuller started 11 games, and you're ready to hand him a $24 million contract.
Well, I think that Will Fuller
per year.
I have no gripes. I have no gripes with paying Will Fuller a lot of money. And
24.
Because here's why, and I think you're a very similar deal. Because we see what he can do, and we see his potential. I don't know that $24 million per average.
$24 million.
Was that what I said?
Yes, you said 2 years, $48 million.
I did say that, yeah. But again, I think that we have to base this on potential. This is not I don't know that a team like $24 million for Will Fuller. Can I say that's the very best that he can get? Yes. I'm not paying anything more than that. But if a team is offering that to Will Fuller and offering Jadeveon Clowney $10 million, it's like a slight reach, but it wouldn't make me piss my pants like the DeAndre Hopkins trade. And I did not literally piss my pants, for those that are wondering. I'm just saying, we're odd people in this world, man.
All right, dude. All right. Interesting sequence from Mitch right there. Okay, let's move on to our third bold predictions. Number 3 for me. I'm not even sure this is such a bold prediction at this point. I think the Bucs are going to lose Chris Godwin, Levante David, Shaq Barrett, Ndamukong Suh, and Leonard Fournette this offseason because they have $24 million in cap space. So if they want to spend any of that on other free agents, they aren't going to be able to re-sign any of those guys because if you re-sign one of those guys, you're probably looking, or even if it's Sue or Fournette, it's probably going to be around $5 to $7 million per year. That puts you around 15 to $20 million left to play with. I would suggest you just stop spending there. I mean, that's pretty low. If you re-sign one of these guys, you really aren't going to be able to sign any other free agents. Really, none. Because listen, if you re-sign Godwin, Barrett, or David, you're looking at under $8 million left to spend, and then you really have to pump the brakes and really have to stop.
I think
I I just don't see any way that they bring back two of these guys. Two of these guys is off the table. I really think so. I think it's off the table. One of them is probably a stretch at this point as well. Maybe a tag for Godwin, Barrett, something like that.
here's the issue. You mentioned $24 million in cap room. That's what it's looking like right now. But a huge issue and a guy that they're going to have to resign is Gronk. If they do not resign Gronk, he's going to retire, which not the end of the world in my opinion. They don't need him. And it's the same thing with Leonard Fournette. Like he played well, but they have Rojo. They don't need a running back. So like there's a lot of things that Tampa has to do this offseason, and they have to prioritize because $24 million, that's enough for one of those players, maybe two, depending on how you feel about the contract. So I don't know what to tell you, Tampa. Like this team may not be the same. It's going to lose a lot of its X factors, but we're not saying that Tampa is going to be terrible, and this is still a team that can easily win the NFC South next year, and probably will win the NFC South if we're being honest with ourselves here, even without a few of these phenomenal players. And it's going to be sad to see a lot of them go, but I think it's best off that they sign one or two of these guys, and then the rest are going to have to go, although it may pain Bucks fans and bandwagon Buck fans.
They could probably maneuver the cap to get some extra dollars and be able to bring back maybe two of these guys. But even then, they're going to be very, very low on salary cap. I don't really know how realistic that is. I just don't see the Bucks going all out to get that done, especially as Tom Brady extensions were rumored to be happening earlier in the offseason. So that's obviously a priority of the Bucks front office if that were true, if they were to really get that done. Brady comes before all of these players. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind as well. So, Mitch, your third and final bold prediction that you think T.Y. Hilton will get franchise tagged by the Colts.
I think that it's not such a bold like when you think of Mitchell Weinberg, bold predictions. Again, sad episode beyond the Davion Clowney one, maybe. But T.Y. Hilton is a mediocre wide receiver. He's been very disappointing over the past few years. In my personal opinion, I think that he is a guy that the Colts need. He's beneficial. And even though they traded for Carson Wentz, if they tag T.Y. Hilton, they have enough money to go after some other wide receiver. They have a ton of money to spend to get another wide receiver, and having Pittman, like one of the free agent wide receivers, for this sake, like let's just say Kenny Galladay, another guy that could probably be franchised at Curtis Samuel. Actually, no, that's a terrible duo right there.
Bring Chris Godwin.
Bring in Chris Godwin. Okay, because Curtis Samuel would make no sense. That'd be terrible. Yeah. That'd be like basically just having the Ravens wide receivers. Why would you do that?
I mean, it would kind of make sense from a fit standpoint, but like Curtis Samuel, Pittman, and Hilton, like I'm not sure that's the best wide receiver core.
I think that they can build a really good wide receiver core having those three wide receivers. T.Y. Hilton has a little bit of an injury problem, as we've seen over the past few years. But not every player is able to play 16 games every year. Those are the players we like. Those are the players we value. Very nice. We like those guys. But
very nice.
Yeah, very nice. But I think that T.Y. Hilton is he's old. Okay, he's 32, and he's a guy that you can learn a lot from. Last year he played with Phillip Rivers. It's gonna be a big upgrade playing with Carson Wentz. Just looking from a potential standpoint, and again, Phillip Rivers a really good quarterback, but one of them can sling the ball farther than 20 yards. Like, come on. And one of them is not not one of them's on the doorstep of retirement, even though Phillip did retire. Congrats to him. But I think that if they tag to Hilton, get another wide receiver or draft another wide receiver, because as we spoke about last week, there's a lot of good wide receivers that they could potentially go after that will fall, especially considering the amount of quarterbacks and offensive linemen that will be picked earlier on.
Agree. I think T.Y. Hilton getting tagged. I'm not actually sure how much the wide receiver tag is this year. Probably
Upwards of 15 million, 15
yeah.
about, I want
So
to say.
I think that's probably a little expensive for Hilton. I think it'd be a lot cheaper if you could probably just bang out a 1 or maybe 2-year contract to keep him in Indianapolis. I think that'd be the smarter move if you really do want to keep him around, which I think would not be a bad idea whatsoever. But that is going to wrap it up for episode 35, I believe. No, episode 36. Episode 36 of the First and Goal pod. Or no, 37.
37. It's marked on the document 37.
Wow. Yeah.
Getting
I just looked
old.
at the document. Wow. We're really getting up there. Next week will be 39. Wow. Okay. So that's going to wrap it up for the 37th episode of the First and Goal podcast. Join me by myself this Thursday, 2 days from now, for the podcast with First and Goal podcast with just Sam Levine. And then join us back here next Tuesday, again with Mitch Weinberg, just like every other Tuesday. He will be here. I will be here. So tune in for that next Tuesday. Also, if you like shorter, quicker opinion and analysis videos, go swing by the YouTube First and Goal on YouTube. That is where you can find that. Go swing by the website as well, firstandgoalfootballtalk.com. All the articles, whether it be NFL, NCAA, they all can be found there. And also there's going to be a lot more draft content, free agency content going up there, like scouting reports, mock drafts, big boards, all that good stuff. The website is the place for that. And then finally, if you want to stay in the loop on everything going on here at First and Goal, follow the Twitter, First and Goal FB. That is the Twitter handle. So until next time, Sam and Mitch signing off.